What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Turn the Jets podcast. I'm your host, Will Parkinson, at WillPod11 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Third pod in 27 hours. Trade deadline will usually do that. Normally, it's because not a lot happened at the deadline. Maybe you get one trade, get the Devontae one a couple weeks before the deadline last year. Maybe we get an edge rusher usually moves. The Von Miller deal comes to mind a couple years back. We usually don't get a two-time All-Pro corner that recently signed the highest contract of a cornerback in NFL history, traded 3 months after being extended, as well as the Jets trading their second longest tenured player and Quinn Williams, who's still under the age of 28. Mike Renner pushing the pile, CBS, everywhere else. We'll talk. Maybe we'll shit talk each other about, now that I have to be an Oklahoma fan, that Notre Dame's currently in the playoff and Oklahoma's not, even though Oklahoma has the most ranked wins. But not the point of today's discussion. I want to first talk about yesterday, what happened, because as a draft guy, I mean, again, not just a draft guy, but as a draft guy being kind of your forte, yesterday obviously had to catch your eye more than most, and Connor and Pete, Trevor and folks alike, where the Jets kind of controlled now 2 drafts in a row and have over $200 million of cap space in 12 months. Not that matters, by the way, who cares? But the draft pick wise, Mike, I guess your overall reaction of yesterday, I guess let's start with Sauce, because I think the Quinnen one, there were some rumors it could happen if for the right package. I can't say I foresaw the Jets trading Sauce now, although the contract makes it seem like the Jets had an idea that might be the case.
I was surprised. I'll say that. I think I woke up Monday after the Jalen Phillips news, and I was like, I thought that was the blockbuster, right, of the trade deadline. And little did I know, 2 more coming down the pike on Tuesday. That, to me, I thought the Jets were a potential. I don't think they had to blow it up. There's some teams around the NFL, whether it was like the Saints over the past 2 years, the Dolphins right now, where you just look at their cap situation, you look where they're at, and you're like, yeah, this team has to blow it. There's no sense keeping this guy on their roster, given that it's going to be 3 years. I thought the Jets could, if they really nailed the quarterback position, have a quick-ish turnaround, 1 to 2 years. And Quinn Williams, Sauce Gardner are guys who, 1 to 2 years are still on that roster, are still performing at a high level. So I didn't think it was a necessary move, but Darren Mooney didn't draft these guys. Obviously, the results with these guys on the football field was not good for Aaron Glenn's defense. So you get kind of what everyone dreams about if you ever dream of being a GM in the NFL or a decision maker, is you get to have a blank slate. The entire team gets in your image exactly how you want it to be. And you have more draft capital than, probably anyone since that Browns run, more likely than not. We'll see where the picks end up, but an insane amount of draft capital over the next 2 years to really just open the window, because you can always use cap space, right? You mentioned $200 million. You can always go sign free agents to fill out a roster. You can't put the genie back in the bottle of Sauce Gardner being cheap, right? You can't get Quinn Williams to be cheap again. They're getting paid their value. You can always go out and sign free agents that kind of fit that bill, but you can't get those cheap guys again unless you have those high draft picks.
Yeah, look, I think on the face of it, I obviously, like everybody else, see that, you get the text and you see the Jets have traded Sauce Gardner, and I'm like, all right, what are we doing here? And then you see 2 first-round picks in A.D. Mitchell. And I do want to talk about A.D. Mitchell, because I feel like, if I remember correctly, you're higher on him than I was. That's just because I think there's him focusing on playing a full football game is challenging. We need to get him some Adderall ASAP. But generally speaking, like, are you surprised we saw 2 first-round picks moved? Like, I know I've seen the Colts are good for the Colts. They're going all in. It's the Jalen Ramsey type deal, and I do get that, but I don't think the Colts are in the same spot the Rams were, right? Am I like reading the room wrong? I don't know. And the Colts are really good right now, but I also watched Daniel Jones poop all over himself on Sunday against a bad Steelers defense.
No, I'm sort of with you. I think both the Colts and the Cowboys, I don't think the trades really made sense for either, given where they're at right now. It's for 2 reasons for the Colts. One is I don't think they're that close. Now, obviously, their offense has been fantastic of late, but it is still Daniel Jones at the helm, as we saw this past weekend. And it's like in the playoffs, it's not just that you have Daniel Jones, it's that you have Daniel Jones and he's going to get overmatched by everyone else in the AFC. Like, the AFC is murderer's row in terms of top quarterbacks in the NFL. So there's that. And there's the fact that you haven't actually extended Daniel Jones yet. You know, Daniel Jones is your quarterback now, but all you just said was, hey, Daniel, you have all the leverage in negotiation. So Daniel's going to get like $50 million a year after this. You're not going to get like a Geno Smith discount. You're not going to get the Sam Darnold discount because he knows that he has you bent over for the Indianapolis Colts. So for those two reasons, I thought it was interesting timing for the Colts. Now, I think so highly of Sauce Gardner that 2 firsts is not too much to pay, in my opinion, especially when you get the cap reduction that is not having to pay him the signing bonus, right? All that money goes to Jets. You just have to pay the salary. So when people are comparing it to the Parsons deal, it's not really apples to apples because of the cap implications. But I still think Sauce is that good, and he's 25, and I think this is a 5-year sort of deal. I mean, that's where his contract goes through 2030. So it's a 5-year deal for the Colts that I think he's worth that much. I just was surprised that the Colts were the team to do it.
Yeah, no, I'm on the same page as you. The Quinnen one, to me, first of all, at the time, obviously, there's been some rumblings. Hey, is he going to ask out? He's been here for 8 years, almost in, obviously 3 coaches, 3 GMs. You really just don't see guys, you just don't really see guys survive 3 GMs, no matter how good the player is. Quinnen needed to be re-upped at the end of this year or even the beginning of this year. He's not got a lot of guaranteed money. He signed that deal, I believe, in 2022. At this point, that deal's a little bit outdated. All that said, if you really look into some of the metrics, and again, I'm not poo-pooing on Quinnen Williams at all, but it's like the pass rush win rate and things like that are a little bit down this year. It's not quite as good as it's been in years past. And not to say he's not still an awesome player, but to get a 1 and a 2 for him, and to get the better of the 2 first rounders next year, I thought was wild that the Cowboys agreed to that. And frankly, Mike, there's a good possibility that's a top 50 pick, top 45 pick this year, and a top 20 pick next year. That's not cheap business. I'm not throwing in Mozzie Smith. He's might be the worst player in the NFL. We're not gonna do that. I saw some tweets today. Hey, Mozzie's like a former first rounder. I'm like, guys, or if you believe in PFF grades, that dude, it makes his own category. But generally speaking, are you surprised at all with the value that they got for Q? Because it was rumored a 2, maybe a 1, and they ended up getting a 1 and a 2, which was crazy to me.
Yeah, and everyone's made this point already, but it's worth reiterating. They got the 1 in the year you'd want the 1. Usually you discount future picks. This year's draft is weak. Next year's, I guess this year, 2026 is weak. 2027 looks like it could be an all-time class. So if one of those teams bottoms out and you always think you're going to be making the playoffs, you make this move and you're like, oh, we're going to be a much better team. But, who is it? Who was it recently that did that? And Houston did that and for the Deshaun deal. And then they end up trading away pick number 4. So it's like, you always think it's going to work out for you. Sometimes it doesn't. And so that could be a top 10 pick. And the player you're getting back could realistically be a better prospect or a better player at, 2 years, 2-3 years down the line than Quinnen Williams is. So I thought that was crazy value, what they got in return. I thought this year's first would have been probably fair value with maybe a day 3 kicker to make it evenish. A 1 and a 2, especially when that 1's in 2027. Like you said, it's the better of 2 1s. So you get 2 swings at the bat of one of those teams. I believe it's the Packers and Cowboys, right? Bottoming out. That's crazy value. You have to do that because, again, he's 27. His useful window for a DT, it could be 2 to 3 more years. That's not long enough to really make it worth your while in this full teardown that they're doing here.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. I think I was a bit surprised. I'm not saying I was surprised they didn't trade Jermaine because I think they like Jermaine a lot and they want to build around. He's a guy you want to build around. That said, he's coming off an Achilles. He's been banged up the last couple of years. I thought the Jets would have pulled the trigger on a second-round pick if that was truly on the table. I've heard kind of mixed things that, it wasn't really on the table or maybe it was. I would have thought that's fair value for a guy that's, again, he's 26 and going to be 27. His best year is 7-8 sacks. That said, I get why they kept him. The Brees thing as well, semantics of, hey, it's a fourth that could become a three. If you're the Chiefs, I'm not really sure why you held firm over a third round pick when go back and look at the Chiefs' third round picks the last like 6 or 7 years. It's Brett Veach has a weakness. I'll tell you, outside of guys that can't drive or kill dogs, it's pretty clear that the last weakness is third round picks.
Well, Leo Chanel's a go.
Yeah, Leo Chanel's. Okay, he's the one. Fine. Well, yeah, he's also a cyborg. But no, and then the Quincy thing is weird. It just came out. Quincy's got benched, and then they trade his brother. He's tweeting he thinks he's going to get traded, and then they don't trade him. That was just a little odd, especially a guy who the Jets are likely to spend money, so you're not really going to get a comp pick for him. Outside of that, no one's giving you anything for Clemens, Lazard. Michael Carter obviously went for a 7. That was kind of just he'll fit in Fangio's defense. Is there anything that the Jets did, and then we'll kind of talk draft here, is there anything the Jets did or didn't do that you were surprised at outside of the two big names? Like the fact they trade 2 superstars and not any like tier 2 guys, for lack of a better term, is a little bit confusing almost.
Yeah, I honestly, I like your analysis there. If they could have gotten a 3 for Breece Hall, I would have moved on from him, but a 4, and especially in this year's draft, it's again weak. Like you keep hammering that home. The 4 is doing nothing for you. So I do think that hanging on to him is probably better long term, and like you would ideally like him to be there. Like you have a good enough offensive line that you want to keep a stable of running backs in today's NFL. So ideally, he's still there for whoever's playing quarterback. And he was a guy who was super young coming out. I think he was like 20 years old on draft day, so he still has a good amount of good years ahead of him, you would think. So nothing really, like if you were going to do a full tear down, Jermaine Johnson really the only other one, but I'm guessing people balked on the value given his injury history. It is all like, I doubt they were going to get a 2 in return if Jalen Phillips got a 3, because to me they were similar-ish from the injury history perspective, but I would probably even prefer Phillips. That's probably why he gets moved. So it would have surprised me if they would have gotten that in return. So I think that's why he's still on the Jets, is just there wasn't a good enough trade package there to do so.
No, it makes sense. I guess let's talk quarterbacks first, and then just kind of overall what this draft class looks like. You mentioned the 2027 class. It seems like if you had a gun to my head today, I would tell you pretty good shot, at least a couple of more Arch, Mateer, kind of all go back. It feels like that's maybe where things are trending. Again, maybe, Moore has a great playoff run. John looks like the guy from the first 4 weeks, and like everyone starts pulling out. So he kind of is like, hey, my hand's fixed and I'm not, I can actually throw a football again. I'm going to go for it. Again, Arch looks a lot like the guy I think everyone thought he was going to be. So as much as I think he's definitely going back, again, there's a path of like, whatever, hey, the situation works out and whatever. But again, most guys are most likely going back. Moore feels like the one most likely to come out. Mendoza and Ty Simpson feel like the top 2 guys, at least right now. Is there anybody else, that you like outside of those guys? And of those 2 guys, if you were the Jets and you're picking 1-1, or you're picking 2 and the Titans are 1 and you can move up, are either of those guys worth the first overall pick? Because I feel like Ty's probably more worth it, but I also have some concerns. He's played like 8 college games and doesn't get hit. Like that is a little concerning.
I think they are in today's NFL, just because if you get competent play on the rookie deal, it's like that's so valuable, right? Now, I don't think either of them were going to be sitting here 5-6 years from now being like, they're tier 1 in the NFL. They could end up, quarterbacks 10 to 15 range. That wouldn't surprise me, but they're not your traditional high-end talents that go number 1 overall, or high-end performance that go number 1 overall, in my opinion. But I think there's a lot to like, in that it's almost like a beggars can't be choosers moment. It's like, do we risk rolling into 2027 thinking it's going to be a better quarterback class? I would bet at this point it is, if you gave me the choice. But it doesn't always work out that way, and you might not. You have 3 first-round picks.
This year too, right? In a lot of ways, everyone was like, this year was going to be 9 first-round guys, and it's like we're kind of scraping at 3 at this point.
Well, I do think it is still better. But that's just how bad last year was. Like every class was going to be better than last year's class.
Not a Shedeur 2 overall guy.
No, gosh, no. But so I do think next year's class is better. But you're not always in position to take advantage of it, right? There might be you might have the 4th overall pick. You might have 3 first-round picks, and 1, 2, and 3 might all tell you no, like they did in last year, right? 2024. Like you couldn't get in to get Jaden Daniels, Drake May, or Caleb Williams last year. Like everyone wanted to, no one was willing to trade. And if you were outside of that, it's like hopefully you got Bo Nix, right? It's like it was quite a drop off from what you got with Jaden Daniels and Drake May at this point. So I do think that if you have 1-1 and Mendoza staring at you or Ty Simpson staring at you, you're probably still drafting that guy, I would think. The only way you're not is if you really want to get nuts and go backwards, deal that, and then get even more picks and just try out what's never really been tried before. That is just like an unbelievable amount of draft capital and find the quarterback elsewhere. I'd be interested to see if that would be the strategy, but I do think at the end of the day, either Mendoza or Simpson are going to be 1-1. I think they've played well enough, they're NFL ready enough, and they have enough tools, even if they're not special in any really regard, that they're probably going to be one of them is going to be the number 1 overall.
Do you worry that Mendoza's kind of like the competition thing? I think is real, and I know he plays in the Big Ten, and I get it, but like we have to be honest here. Like they've played one real. And again, people are going to take this as like, oh, they haven't played any real teams. I'm not shitting on Indiana. They've taken care of business and they've done everything they need to do. And they had a huge win against like they took care of their biggest game, and credit to them. But I also do get a little concerned of like, man, there's a lot of cupcakes, and if he falls flat against an Ohio State in the Big Ten title game or whatever it may be, just use that as an example, or in the playoff, aren't we kind of sitting there going, it's a little Zach Wilson-ish where it's like, not Zach is the only example, but there's a lot of guys where it's like, ooh, like, do we ignore the one outlier game where you sucked against a big team? Like, I'm not saying he's going to. He doesn't, like, what's his superpower to you? Because, like, I don't know if you feel this way, and I'm sure you do, but, like, when it comes to quarterbacks, unless you're going to be a master of everything and just be, like, not special at anything, like, I really want you to have one thing that all hell breaks loose in the pocket or all hell breaks loose during a game. You have this one thing that gets you out of trouble. What do you feel like his one thing is, I guess, that would make him a 1-1 overall guy?
I think his best trait is throwing into tight windows. He attacks tight windows without being dangerous with the football. And this year, 4 turnover-worthy plays all year. And you even saw it last year, and that's why when you were going through that and mentioning the level of competition, I was like, when I watch this Cal tape, and again, he didn't put up big numbers last year, but they were pretty good, like 280 yards per game almost at Cal with no NFL wide receivers, no NFL offensive line. Like it was tough there for him, and he still rose above. So I that's what gives me more. If he only had this Indiana year, I would be hesitant. But he has this Indiana year on the backs of a year when he was getting his ass. I mean, he was sacked 40 times last year at Cal. And once he did have better pass protection, he's only been sacked 7 times this year. Like he has not taken those negative plays. He's not made those negative plays. And I think that, if anything, is a superpower, is that he can keep an offense on schedule. He can make those tight window throws while not giving you the negative plays that can kill a drive.
No, it makes a ton of sense. In terms of, Sellers is another guy I didn't mention that likely, should go back. If you're Aaron Glenn, Darren Muji, based on like, you can use the Detroit prototype. I think, based on what I've seen from Glenn, I think there's a lot of similarities to the Sauce trade and the Keyshawn trade back in 2000, where Jets got the 4 first-round picks and basically kind of built a foundation with, Chad Pennington, obviously, and Beck, but like Abraham and Ellis. Abraham gets traded and they get Nick Mangold. There was like a chain reaction of that move. If you were like kind of trying to take a peek into, hey, what Aaron Glenn, Darren Muji type of quarterback, again, Muji was there in Denver when they took Bo Nix, but then you look at Glenn, had Goff, and then obviously a Parcells type of like 30 plus starts, team captain, big school, like the whole, kind of mantra that's, rightfully or wrongfully shaped a lot of the way quarterbacks are drafted. Who I guess fits this best? Because I feel like people are going to be like, oh, he loves Fields, he must love Sellers. Like maybe, but there's also a world in which like he loves Mendoza because he could be his Goff, or he loves Ty Simpson because there's splashy. Like where do you settle in? Like what's the Jets' potential best fit? At least as of today.
Mendoza does. I've heard Jared Goff comps for him, and I think they're pretty apt. Like that's stylistically, at least, how he plays the game. I think he has a little better arm, just a little bit better athlete than Goff. Maybe not quite as, polished as Goff in terms of just like quick and how he plays the position. But Goff really wasn't that until later on in his career anyway. So I do think that Mendoza, that's where you're looking if your Tanner Engstrand is just like, he can operate what you did in Detroit. He can do that. Now, he's not going to bring a running threat to the table. He doesn't have that to his game, but neither does Simpson. Really, Moore is the only one who kind of does, but he's also very skinny. You're not going to actually feature him in the running game too much at the next level. And of all these guys, like, I think at the end of the day, it's just going to be Mendoza and Simpson. I think every other guy comes back to school because of what the money is, how little some of these guys have played, how bad some of them have looked this year. It's going to be those two, and then the guys who literally have to come to the club, Nussmeier, Aller, and none of those guys are factoring in the first round conversation at this point.
Yeah, I have not. I was not a huge Kate Klubnik guy, but Nussmeier's. How do I put this without starting drama? I would say his commitment to this year has been an interesting approach to what you do to get ready for an NFL season or a college season that you could have gone 1-1. Mike, I guess last couple of things here on this draft, because again, the Jets are going to have, multiple twos and obviously multiple ones. And again, we talked about 2027 being a loaded class, and it's just hard to speculate because it's so far away. It's not even really worth in the middle of November talking about guys that, again, outside of Jeremiah Smith, and Arch, there's very few guys that are locks to be, going the top 5 in 2 years. This receiver position, the Jets probably, I would say 95% of mock drafts from now until the end of April are going to be Jets quarterback with their first rounder, receiver with their second first rounder. I'm a huge Mekhi Lemon person. I think he's like an unbelievably good football player. And if you look at comps of I'm not saying he's Amon Ra, but it's a lot of the same things where it's tough as nails, can play wherever you want, does everything really well, high character dude. If there's a world in which, and I want to talk about A.D. Mitchell before we wrap, but if there's a world in which A.D. Mitchell figures out how to be a wide receiver 3 in this league and can just be go play X, dude, Garrett's going to move around the formation, we're going to find a true slot guy, this offense could look pretty good. Doesn't he kind of make a lot of sense? Or there's the Carnell Tates, Denzel Boston's. Where do you land on this receiver class? Again, if they went the veteran route, I guess you could start to do, the Tyson route. But I just don't know if the Jets are in that window where they could take a receiver in the top 5 without a quarterback right now.
Yeah, and truthfully, I think Carnell Tate's going to go top 10 too at this rate with the way he's
playing. Guys always are ooh, they'll be at the end of round 1, and then you look up and it's pick 9. You're oh shit, they're all gone.
Especially in this year's class, it's with everyone seeing how valuable receivers
last year too, right? It's we learn our lesson of just take the really good football player that's going to be good right away.
And they're going to those guys are going to go high. Tyson or Tate will have to be their first pick, in my opinion, but Lemon wouldn't. And the only pushback I would have against Lemon, and I love him too. Everything you said, I completely agree with. But the mold of those type of wide receivers, I think you mentioned Amon-Ra St. Brown, but also
first round pick.
Puka, Igbuka, they're all bigger than him. They're all 6 foot plus, 200 plus. He's 5'10", 190. And that's the only thing I would say is that he's just a little bit tighter of a catch radius. So I don't know if he quite has the ceiling of those guys, but I think if you have the other two, you have Garrett Wilson and A.D. Mitchell, who have that catch radius, have that, more complete game. I think he'd be a perfect complement. So depending on where that second first rounder is, I think Lemon would be a good fit. In terms of,
is there any D tackles? Because again, this is the one issue with, you're trading guys. I think, there's Azari Thomas can step right in. He's been really good in the short action he's been able to see. He had a really great spring and things like that. So I doubt the Jets are going to go back and invest another top pick in a corner right now. And they're paying Stevens, who's improved, and traded for Brownlee. Defensive tackle is going to need probably one, if not multiple bodies. I assume they probably pay somebody, in a shorter term deal. Is there any D tackles you like in that fringe round 1, round 2 type of guys at the moment that you're hey, maybe they rise, right? And throughout the draft process, they have the Walter Nolan, we're just going to bet on the athlete and ignore some of the other stuff. Or is it do they go the other, the Tyleek route where it's hey, we're just going to take a guy because his tape's awesome. Do you have any guys that you like in that end of round 1 or middle round 1 to middle round 2 range right now? You're oh, that could be an interesting, if they don't go receiver or they go, D tackle with their first, second round pick type of situation.
Unfortunately, no. I think this D-tackle class stinks. Like it truly does.
Basically, is pay to fix that problem in free agency.
What I would recommend. Now, it's not bereft of bodies entirely, but I like last year's DT class a lot more in that, the second wave of DTs, Walter Nolan, Derek Harmon, I thought those guys were very good prospects. This year, after Peter Woods, no other guy in my top 32. The next DT on my board is Caden McDonald, who you mentioned Tyleik Williams. He's actually his replacement at Ohio State, but he's even compared to Tyleik Williams much more of just like a pure nose tackle, run defender first. And he's awesome, man. He's probably the best guy in that regard in college football. But is that what you really want in Aaron Glenn's defense? You really want just a solely two-down sort of guy? I'm not so certain. Then after him, it's like Amari Washington for Oregon, who's doesn't necessarily have to be a two-down guy. He is a nose tackle himself also. Doesn't have to be a two-down guy, but very unrefined as a pass rusher. And then you have Caleb Banks from Florida, another nose tackle. It's all nose tackles in this class. But he hasn't even played this year. He broke his foot or had a foot injury, only played one game. He's a fifth-year guy. His tape is very inconsistent before that, so he's probably going to drop to like mid to late day two. So it really is not a great year to need DT. It feels like if you're drafting DT, it's like third or fourth round in this year's class.
Last couple of quick things here as we wrap. A.D. Mitchell, and then I want to have two more draft questions for you. But A.D. Mitchell, thoughts on what he was coming out versus where he is now, and is there something in there? I've talked to Tex about this yesterday, so I know your answer. But is there something in there with A.D. Mitchell that the Colts were missing, or it just hasn't clicked yet? Was it just because? Look, to be fair to A.D. Mitchell, outside of anything else, Anthony Richardson sucks and was terrible. Their quarterback play until Daniel Jones for the first 7 weeks of the year has been pretty awful the last couple of years, or the last year and a half he's been a pro. He's in a room with Alec Pierce, who he's kind of a similar player to in a lot of ways. Alec Pierce is really good. The guy who I wanted the Jets to be, go after, became a free agent or a trade target. Michael Pittman, who they paid, who's a really good player, who's a top 32 pick or 33 pick himself. And then Josh Downs, who's a primary slot, but again, a really good player. They have Warren, they have Jonathan Taylor. Like, there's only one football. So if you want to be the glass half full, right, like, he's in a really loaded room as the young guy. If you want to be glass half empty, a lot of the issues at Texas that, like, made him fall to a second-round pick, like dropping the ball on the 1 yard line because you're celebrating, is, like, kind of what we've seen. So where do you fall on A.D. Mitchell? Because, again, it feels like a throw-in, but the Jets apparently went to the Colts for like, no, we want this guy. I don't know. Where do you stand on, I guess, A.D. Mitchell? Is there any hope there if you're a Jets fan?
You brought up that fumble play, and I would just tell any Jets fan listening, just go watch the full play. The fumble, it's really just a microcosm of Adonai Mitchell's game, because it was like an 81-yard touchdown or something like that, or should have been a touchdown. The play itself, you could probably count on, maybe two hands the amount of guys that could in the NFL make that play. Like, it is a truly insane. He like mosses the corner, breaks two tackles, gets down the field, and then like runs away from everybody else. He is, in terms of physical, just pure physical ability, probably a top 10 receiver in the NFL. And that's not an exaggeration. You might think he ran like a 4.35 coming out. The guy is a unique physical specimen. He just is. And even like, on a pure, when he's been on the football field production standpoint, he has produced. It's just consistency. And you saw it even later in that game. That was his last game before he basically was not going to be on the Colts anymore. That fumble out of the end zone, and then a holding that called back a Jonathan Taylor touchdown later in that game. He is not down to down the guy that he needs to be at the NFL level to rely on. And we talked about Mekhi Lemon and who are the guys in that mold at the NFL level. What are they? Reliable. They are where they need to be, play after play after play. And if you target them, they're going to fight like hell to do whatever it is to secure that football. You can't say that about A.D. Mitchell at this point in his career, but maybe this is his wake-up call. Maybe this is what he needs to become that guy. And hopefully he goes to a situation there in New York where they can mold him into that guy. But the sort of blockers that were in his way to getting the reps he needed to develop, they aren't there in New York. There's no blocker. That guy should be on the field every single snap of every single game. And you should do everything in your power to get the best out of him there in New York, because, again, he's that talented. I think he could have a real deal second act here. And you may be sitting here 8 months from now or whatever the draft is saying, I don't think we actually need that wide receiver. We could maybe wait on a slot receiver in this draft. We don't need to use that second first rounder on a wideout.
Yeah, him and Mechie, I think I made this point yesterday, but if one of Mechie, A.D. Mitchell, Arian Smith can be a legit, like, hey, there's a quote-unquote starter, an 11 personnel, like, we feel good next year, the rookie quarterback probably, that this guy's out there, and I feel like, oh, this is a pretty good group, right? Like, Mason's shown a lot. The running back room should look pretty decent. The offensive line looks really good. Like, we're actually in a pretty decent spot here, and there's actually not a bad situation. Last question here. I asked this to a couple of people yesterday because I was like, let's just say they make – what's the craziest kind of curveball the Jets, as if we're sitting here in November, we've already gotten the Kyler Murray, and I will say this right now, and I hope I get bookmarked for it. If the Jets trade for Kyler Murray as their fix, burn everything. Just burn it all. He got soft benched and then actually benched for Jacoby Brissett. No. The answer is no. I've already gotten a lot of the, what about Joe Burrow? What about CJ Stroud? The guys that Trevor Lawrence, the guys that are like either paid or need to get paid, kind of in dysfunctional situations as well. Could the Jets always draft picks? I don't know. Make the Bengals say, hey, here's 4 first-round picks. Bengals like say no. Outside of that, or maybe this could be the answer. Is it Reese or Downs out of Ohio State and just like, we're just going to draft a bunch of good football players and like come get us type of situation? Like, what's the absolute wild card weird move if you were like sitting there like, what the hell just happened? But I kind of like it situation with the Jets.
Well, I think the most interesting one to me would be to trade 1-1 without really addressing quarterback in a meaningful manner. Like to kind of, I don't want to say double tank, but to treat next year as another, as like another, like, let's gather more capital. Because if you get 1-1, say 2027 after trading away 1-1, kind of like what the Panthers did, but had traded it away already, right? If you do that, if you get really stink for 2 straight seasons, and have 2027 and say it's Arch Manning, he's coming off just an electric season, and you have, a dozen first-round picks to build around him. That is, to me, kind of a scenario we've never seen play out. We thought maybe we would get that with Baker, and with how his career started off, he obviously that didn't come to fruition for a lot of different reasons there in Cleveland. But like, that's a scenario where we've never actually seen a guy stepping in 1-1 with just an unbelievable amount of young talent around him, an unbelievable amount of cap space to just shoot for the moon. That would be the most interesting play, in my opinion. After that, if you're trading for like a vet, I think trying to make a move for Dak Prescott would be the other one that's the most interesting, because like Dak with those 2 wide receivers that they have, that offensive line, like it could go good real quick there. There would be no transition period. That's the one that's interesting. And he's in his early 30s. The Cowboys may be looking to move on. Who knows? He's getting paid a lot there. They have a weird cap situation. That all of the other ones don't really move the needle. You would have to come up with something even crazier than Dak Prescott for me to see the needle get moved for the New York Jets.
And I just don't know, like, not to be that guy. And I'm not saying I wouldn't be hyped if Joe Burrow was the Jets quarterback. But like, are the Jets really going to go trade all this capital that they're just, and again, maybe I'm wrong, but a guy who's 3 of his 6 years has been season-ending injuries, and I do like worry a little bit with Joe. It's like eventually, like, your body does start to break down. Like, we've seen it with everybody, and it's very risky. Just, again, it would be awesome. Everyone talked themselves into it. It'd be a really crazy story. It is a little concerning that it's like, dude, this guy's every year, it feels like he's just getting the shit kicked out of him. And I don't know if it's his fault, the Bengals, everyone's fault, but it's a little concerning.
Cincinnati would burn to the ground. I live here. It would. This city, their entire identity is Joe Burrow.
This will never happen. But is you draft a quarterback and you trade 2 of the other 3 ones for Jamar Chase and say no to 3 ones for Jamar, and now you have Garrett Wilson, Jamar Chase, Mason Taylor, Breece Hall in this offensive line for a rookie quarterback. Again, won't happen. There's no shot this happens. But like, that's at least even more. That to me makes more sense than just moving 5 first-round picks for Joe Burrow and saying, like, here's the same Jets roster that's 1-7, and we just think quarterback's the only issue, because it's not. Like, they need at least 1 linebacker, a safety, defensive tackle, an edge rusher, probably 2 receivers, and a quarterback. Like, that's a lot of things. So, yeah, I just was curious. The answer I got yesterday was just take both Ohio State defensive guys and just say I'm like, but that's kind of what then you're kind of just doing exactly what you just did with Quinn Williams and Sauce Gardner. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. Mike, pushing the pile, CBS. We'll have you obviously back on, around draft time, but appreciate you taking some time. Respectfully, because USC is owned by Notre Dame now, I just have to hope that Oklahoma wins against Bama next weekend and the amount of ranked wins gets them in the playoffs.
Yeah, I want Oklahoma in there. I love Mateer. I'm a big Mateer guy. I just don't think he's coming out this year. But
I wish the hand didn't happen because I think the Heisman thing would have probably happened, and I don't think that Texas game goes the same. And Ole Miss, he was bleeding all over the sideline. He couldn't throw the football. Again, it was the coolest story because it was awesome. He came back in less than 2 weeks from a surgically repaired hand, but not smart. If we really
probably shouldn't.
Probably shouldn't have done that for 800 different reasons. Mike, appreciate taking some time, and we'll talk soon.
For sure, Will. Thanks for having me, brother.